So I had a lot of worries. I was very worried as a mother because my children could not read well. So they could read. Yes, their result had shown that they had challenges with spelling and a few things, but then it was more of when there were complex words, they couldn't sound it out or read properly. And that really affected their other subjects because if they couldn't read the questions, they couldn't answer them, even though they knew the answers. So that was my first real connection with why it's really important that we take literacy seriously. Because at that point, as a parent, I was very, very worried, and that worry kept me up at night. And I'm sure that there are lots of parents like that everywhere, who worry about their children. And there are a lot of economies around the world where we understand from the initial statistics that we're given that children, even though so start taking the issues of literacy very seriously. I started taking the issue of literacy very seriously, and I said, okay, what do I know? How can I help my children? And that was where I started engaging in the world of literacy. And that's the perspective I'm going to start with today. At that point, what I did was I started engaging my children through play, and I started getting them to really love to read books, even though they might not be able to sound all the words properly. But one project that made a difference in the life of my children, and I mean, I can gladly say that I can link their improvement in literacy too, was the project where they were raising funds and they were doing a book drive to donate a library to a school, which they're still on anyway. What they did was that they started this book drive, and they started receiving books from all over the country. And one thing they were upset about was the fact that, oh, all these books are going to go away. So I told them that before you start that library, can you make sure that you read all the books so that at least you won't feel bad that all the books are going away. And that's how they started reading every single night. And within 3 weeks, the teacher called me and said, what are you doing with these children? Why has their spelling improved? They can read better. What's going on? And I'm like, I didn't do anything. I just engaged them, and they've started reading a lot of books, and they're enjoying reading. Every night they read a book before they went to bed. In the morning, before they have their bath, they are reading 1 chapter or 2 chapters, and they were doing extremely well in school. And that began or started the change that I wanted to see in them, and they started reading very well. So that's a personal story to me. Now, most times when we were growing up, they told us that literacy was about reading and writing. And that's what we still think literacy is all about. But literacy is more than that. I would like to say that today, literacy has become something different. There is no subject that can say that literacy is not important to them, because like my children, if the child cannot read the language of instruction, they cannot do anything in any other subject. So literacy is very, very critical. And I like the definition from Alberta Education in Canada, and I would like to read that definition of literacy to us. It says that literacy is the ability, confidence, and willingness to engage with language, to acquire, construct, and communicate meaning in all aspects of daily living. So literacy is not just about school. Literacy is not just about reading and writing. Literacy is living. It's the ability to, communicate meaning in all aspects of your daily living. So it is important for everyone. Literacy is important for everyone, whether children or even adults. I remember just last year, I started doing some work, or I started engaging with an agency in Lagos State called the Agency of Mass Education. And that was when I knew that adult literacy was another ballgame entirely. I started seeing the fact that even adults that are in their 50s, in their 60s, cannot read and write. And that had affected their ability to, live properly, to communicate, to do business. And while I engaged with this agency, I was able to see the work that they were doing, even with adult literacy, where they taught adults how to read and write. And I could see the difference and the bright eyes of adults when they were doing their graduation, and how proud they were that they could start reading and writing. So literacy goes beyond just reading and writing. It helps individuals to engage with life. Now, I didn't say literacy was just speaking English, right? It is language, the ability to communicate, the ability to, construct meaning. And that is where we want to be. That is what we want to encourage. Now, we all talk about the Sustainable Development Goal 4, talking about education for all. But it all starts with even literacy for all. That's the baseline. Because even before education for all, we need to ensure that the basics, especially in developing countries like ours, we need to ensure that we have the basics and people can communicate and they can read, they can write, they can listen, they can speak in the way that they're engaging themselves. And that is where I want us to be. That is where I want us to start thinking as we go into these sessions. I've talked about adult literacy. I've talked about literacy for children. We need to start looking at other ways. And if you look at the agenda for today, you see, I'm happy that you also have literacy, as it concerns children with disabilities. Fortunately, my twins that I said that they couldn't read, of course, at some point we realized that they were on the lower spectrum of dyslexia. And so they can't spell, they can't, read properly, but they've been improving because we were able to address it. Now, what we need to do is that we need to ensure that we engage the different, and I'm going to be discussing some of the frameworks I think that would work to ensure that, we can have literacy for all, especially in Nigeria. And for all, I mean for children, for adults, for children with disabilities, for everyone. How can we ensure literacy for all? So when we do this, I'm going to divide the frameworks into 4. And at the end, I'm going to, charge all of us to be able to take action, because for us, it is not about just listening today. It is about also taking appropriate action. Now, in terms of the framework 1, because we're talking about literacy in the context of education, literacy for all in the context of SDG 4, which is education for all, the first framework for me is that every child deserves literacy education. At the baseline, even if I don't go to school, I should at least be literate. So that's what I'm talking about. So the first framework is that we need to ensure literacy teaching, and we also need to ensure all our teachers are prepared to teach literacy. So I didn't say there should be literacy teachers. I said all our teachers should be, empowered to teach literacy. Because the truth is, like I mentioned earlier, literacy is important for every single aspect of education. For every subject, literacy is important. And, every student, deserves to be able to communicate. Every student deserves the right, deserves to be able to engage. And that's why we talk about, literacy teaching and ensuring teachers are prepared. And in terms of even areas where, they don't have access to education, I believe that the basics of even communicating should be given to these children, so that at least when they can communicate and when they can engage, they can live a better life. Because in this century that we're in, communication is a core skill. Without it, I don't even understand how they're going to succeed. So if we want to ensure that our children, the next generation, succeed, we need to ensure that literacy teaching is available to all children. So the second framework is around schools and schooling. Every school should support literacy learning, and we shouldn't do the one size fits all. Like I mentioned, there are children with different abilities in schools. There are children that learn faster than each other. So we need to ensure high quality literacy curriculums and instructional materials are available to all children within schools. This would ensure that all children have access at their own level to literacy. Now that there has been a cut in the school calendar, I mean, children have been home for 6 months, there's been a lot of learning loss. As schools come back to, as the schools resume and they come back to, they need to ensure that they engage the children, they test where they are, the assessments are done and they understand where they are, and they continue to engage them to be able to, work with the curriculum. And this is what I think within schools that should be put in place. And like I mentioned, we should avoid the one size fits all approach. The way you would deal with child A is different from the way you deal with child B. Even I that have twins, the way I deal with one is different from the way I deal with other, because they are unique in their own ways. Framework 3 is about supporting students and engaging with them. That is taken forward from framework 2, which is school and schooling. Every child deserves support. Additional support based on their level of learning, additional support from all other stakeholders outside even the school is very important. If possible, we should ensure culturally relevant instruction so that even when the children are learning, they can relate with it. We need to ensure that we use a broad range of literacy materials, not just give them books. We need to engage them. So children learn differently these days. If we have to take them outside the school to engage, let's do that. If we have to do activities inside, let's do that. This is a new generation. This is the 21st century. It's not just about forcing children to read. Even sounds and blending, which is what has been going on in these days. We need to start looking for different methods and engage children differently. We need to look for different ways to support their learning, whether digital, whether outdoor play. It's not everything that is technology, but technology might help if they understand well. And even if the school doesn't have access to technology, you can take them outside, you can let them engage culturally, you can let them engage with their environment, and that would really help them out. You need to ensure that you support all students at the point of their own needs. Then the fourth framework is very important, and that is our families and our community. It has been established that, in terms of literacy development, the family is like the major core, because the child lives with the parents before they even start school. So research has shown that language skills is a product of, what goes on at home, what goes on in the community, and it impacts, future literacy performance. So it's important that we take families and the community very seriously, as well as we build our children when it comes to literacy. It's important as well, especially if we're dealing with children from low-income families who probably, or children that are coming from families of instability, trauma, violence, or maybe community unrest. There are a lot of situations that can affect a child communicating or engaging. Like I said, literacy is not just reading and writing, it's also engaging, communicating, and also being able to relate well in the environment. So it's important we understand where our children are coming from. It's important to understand their background, the issues that they're facing, and use that as we engage the children to be able to get the baseline literacy that they require. It's very sad that Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. The figure that was mentioned before, the over 10 million, as actually, I think the most recent number is about 13.2 million. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that those figures have increased. They don't even need, you don't even need to do any math. The fact that schools cannot even go beyond certain capacity now means that some children will be left out. Because of the pandemic, some schools have shut down. Parents are unable to afford school fees. There are lots of reasons why we know that more children will be out of school as a result of this pandemic. So we need to be able to, as all stakeholders, families, communities, the government, we need to do something. So the 4 frameworks I think I have mentioned are areas that we need to work hard as a country, as partners, everyone, to be able to ensure that our children achieve at least the baseline literacy. Of the children that are even in school, I mean, there are several research that has been done that some students that are in secondary school cannot read at the level of primary 3. I mean, that data is so worrisome. So we need to do, I mean, I did my NYSC in Zamfara State many years ago, and there was a graduate that couldn't feel the form. He couldn't read what was on the form, and he couldn't feel the contents of the form because he couldn't understand anything that was written in there. How do we explain that someone has gone through primary school, through secondary school, has finished university, and they cannot read? It is very worrisome. So what do? We need to rethink literacy. I mean, I'm going to give us 2 points as I plan to close. 2 points. The first thing is we need to rethink literacy. I've given us that we should remove literacy as, just the ability to read and write. We should look at it as everything that involves aspects of daily living, communication, construction, acquisition of knowledge, being able to listen. All of that forms literacy. Now, when we think of literacy is key for every child to become a global citizen. Literacy is not just about reading and writing. It gives every child to be able to cross boundaries, to be able to unleash their potentials, because they can communicate with everyone, they can interact, they can engage, and that's what life is about. So we need to be able to ensure that that happens for every child. It is their right and they deserve it, and we all need to ensure that happens for them. We need to, ensure that we engage, we provide the opportunities to engage these children. Like I mentioned for my kids, I told them to, let's have a project where we're donating a library and engaging, children to read. And from there, they also, took up the passion to read. We need to ensure that we create frameworks that ensures that children, whether they're in school or out of school, they're able to at least engage in reading, engage in writing, engage in communication, so that at least they have that baseline. Now, for Nigeria, giving us, the gloom statistics. And, when we call a state of emergency in every other place or every other sector, we need to, look at our own education sector and look at the fact that, minus the fact that we're number 1 in the world when it comes to out of school children, we also rank very high when it comes to children in school that are not learning, children in school that, that don't have the right foundation. So the challenges in our education sector is enormous. And money is not just the only one of our educational problems. But we need to talk about it. So we need to also look at our current budget as a country when it comes to improving quality of education. Even when children are out of school, what are we doing in terms of creating learning pods to ensure that at least they're engaged? School doesn't have to be 4 walls. We need to ensure we continue to engage our children. We can't continue to fail our children, the next generation, because every boy or child who fails to be educated as a child in our country, we are creating a bleak future for our country. So we can't continue to ignore our children that are failing, that are not learning, that are barely passing, or we're just graduating them and pushing them to the next class. That is not the smart way to go as a country. So we cannot continue to fail them. Now, a good first step for us is, like I mentioned, the budget of the country. That is at the top level what government needs to do. I understand that government needs to build roads, buildings, and all of that, but the minds of our children, we need to build the minds of our children. They are the soul of our nation. We need to protect our future. So they are the ones I think we need to also invest in. We cannot afford to let the educational system, whether formal or informal, to get worse than it already is. That is why we need to continue to invest in our education. I think it was President Weah from Liberia that said education is like a bicycle. You need to keep pedaling to move forward. So you can't stop. You have to continue to pedal to move forward. And that is why we need to ensure that we're doing this for our children and we're ensuring literacy for all. I mentioned at the beginning that I wasn't an educator, but that I was working in the education space. My project, Sustainable Education and Enterprise Development, works with 715 schools in the 6 education districts of Lagos State. And these schools are private schools that serve poor children. And one of the key things for us is to ensure at least basic literacy and numeracy for these children, in addition to all other things that they are learning. Without literacy, I mean, it is something I have had to learn the hard way personally, but without literacy, without engaging all of the ecosystem, we cannot get our children to where they need to be. So on this note, I would like to end this and say, as we go ahead into the sessions, as we go ahead into the program that has been planned for us today, let us listen, let us take notes. We have the core educators coming to talk to us. Let us learn about how we can make this happen for our children. We can't continue to be ignorant or prove ignorant or pretend that we're ignorant of what is going on around us. Let us take it seriously. Let us take notes and let us play our own part. Every single person can play their own part. I've played my own part in my own home by supporting my own children. I'm playing my own part by working with other schools to support other children. No matter how small, play your own part. And I'm sure that at the end of the day, Nigeria will be a better place. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. I'm very excited. Wow, 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 wow. The power is so much. You just charged us. Thank you, Mrs. Lanre Oniyitan. Just as you said, no matter how little, we must play our parts. We must play our part. Why we are here today is not just for us to discuss the government is not doing this, they are failed, they are doing this, they are not providing enough funds, the budget for education is not large enough. We are here to see what each and every one of us can do. We are here to see what individuals, what I can do, what you can do, what can I start with. We want it such that at the end of today, I'm taking notes of what I can do. By the end of today, we all get to work and start changing things in our communities. We cannot leave this to, of course, it is important the government do the right thing, but we cannot leave it to them alone, and we cannot pretend as if we are not less concerned. We cannot say because our children can access books, they can access online learning facilities, then we are less concerned about the child next door. We are less concerned about the child next street, the child next town. Because just as I said, I during a literacy session I had, was the last week, I said, presently, I don't live in an estate, though they call it an estate, but I don't take it as that. I don't live in a hybrid area, but then I pay huge charges on security. Every year we have our annual due for security, and we still can't say we're sleeping with all our eyes shut. We still can't say, no one dares us to leave our gates open. if it is this that now, what will it be in the next 1 decade? What will it be in the next 2 decades? So we are here to see what each and every one of us can start doing. Thank you, Mrs. Oniyitan. Thank you so much. We really appreciate our facilitator for the first session, Mr. John Abbey. Is very much here with us. You know, Mr. Abbey is such a fantastic person. Let me just say it. I hope you didn't hear me. Okay.